Hi there, I hope you're doing well. And I just wanted to tell you that your writing assignments look great. And today, your writing assignments will be on Moodle. You can either write directly into Moodle or you can write on a Word document and then upload that. I'll be able to grade your work faster and provide more feedback that way. So we're going to start Chapter 4 this week, and you're going to have two writing assignments for Chapter 4, one today and one on Thursday. And I'm going to continue these writing assignments to give you an opportunity to process and think about the content that we're talking about in the course, and give you an opportunity to integrate that content with your everyday life. We'll have a Chapter 4 quiz next Thursday, March 23rd, and there'll be a study guide that will tell you how many questions will be on the quiz, what type of questions, and the content to focus on when you study. And I generally try to have the assignments for each class available in Moodle a few days before class meets, and you're certainly not required, but if you're ever interested in what class is going to look like, you can take a look in Moodle and see what we'll be doing that class. Now, one thing I wanted to address is last time I spoke, I said that the point of sociology is not to persuade you to believe in a particular political agenda. However, it would not be correct to say that sociology is not related to politics, because it is. First, politics is an important part of any society, and so sociologists study politics. And then also, certain sociological perspectives align with certain political ideologies. So, for example, functionalism is more conservative and would align with conservative ideology, whereas a conflict theory would align with a liberal ideology. Regardless of the perspective that a sociologist chooses, sociology is always going to be based on data, which again, as I said earlier, can be difficult because data may conflict with our belief system. So in this chapter, we're going to look at socialization, which is the processes by which we learn how to navigate in society, how we learn how to develop relationships, and how we develop a sense of who we are, which is our identity. And our identity is actually dependent on our society and our culture, because our culture determines what our values are, as well as our norms, what's expected, or what sort of behavior is acceptable. So human beings are social animals, and socialization in childhood and infancy is critical, but socialization occurs throughout life, and social interaction is necessary for brain development, and it's also necessary for mental health as we grow older. Now, American culture is individualistic, and our culture downplays the importance of others. For example, I am self-made, I've never received help from anybody, but that's really not the case. If we live in a society, we are actually interdependent on many different people. So, for example, when you go to the store, the fact that there's food there depends on the interactions of lots of different people, from the truck drivers to the farmers, and then you deal with the cashier and the store manager, etc. So in a society, we have relationships with lots of people where we're dependent on people even if we don't have relationships on them. Another thing that American culture downplays is the influence that others have on us. As human beings, we care very much what other people think about us, and our culture downplays the importance of that. So our identity is who we are, and sociologists looked at a social, or define a social identity, which is what others think of us or what others think we should be, and then a self-identity, which is related to that social identity, but is more defined by our own personal experiences and our own choices. So our society, as I said earlier, definitely influences our identity, and we often have multiple identities as a result of multiple statuses. And this word status means a position. So we can have a status as a child and as a parent, or a status as a student and an employee. And sometimes these identities will support one another, and sometimes they'll conflict. So for example, if we're a parent and a child is sick, we have to call into work or can't attend school one day, then that can cause conflict in our lives. So trying to get the next slide up here. Okay, so one of the things that you'll read in the first part, or you've already read in chapter 4, agents of socialization. Family, schools, religious affiliations, peer relationships, mass media, and our work are all systems and structures that impact how we interact with others and what we think about ourselves. But the most important agent of socialization, no matter what culture we're in, is definitely our family. Now, two vocabulary words that I want to be clear that you understand are social role and social status. In our everyday life, we tend to use this word role as a sociologist would use this word status. In our everyday life, I would say, I have the role of a teacher, or I have the role of a mother. Well, a sociologist would say, I have the status of a mother or the status of a teacher. And the role, rather than the position, are the actual behaviors. So a sociologist would say that the role of a mother might be to provide emotional support to her children, as opposed to the role of a father, which might be to protect mothers and children. And I'm not saying that this is necessarily always the case, but that's generally what our culture assumes these roles to be, as well as many others. So the status would be mother, the status would be father, the status would be children, and the role would be behaviors, where status would be the position. The last thing that I'd like to address about the content is the lifespan and socialization on page 75. The graphic on page 75 gives some key points of historical occurrences that have happened in the past 100 years and allows you to see how we view our life depending on how long we actually live. And I have here pointed out some things that I thought were pretty interesting. In the 1930s, the child labor laws became regulated, and in the 1950s, high school became universal. Before that, high school was not universal. Not everybody went to high school, and it wasn't even required to get a job necessarily. And then life expectancy in the 2000s increased dramatically. And so that has had an impact on our society. Each one of these factors have had an impact on our society. Let me just talk a minute about the lifespan. So for example, if we look at the status of an elderly person, their roles in the past 20 years have changed tremendously. 50, 100 years ago, grandparents weren't generally alive to make a big impact on the lives of the grandchildren. But now, grandparents are alive and they are living healthy lives, and they often have more money than their children do. And so grandparents now help raise children. And so